Hello friends, I'm Steve Kibble. You're watching the Dominion Report. Today we're going to talk about the structure of the US government. We're doing this because in future videos we're going to talk about things that the US government is doing and how they are doing them, why they are doing them, how that impacts Canadians. So for context, we're just going to give a brief overview for anyone that needs to hear it of how the system of government is set up and structured. And I'm going to do this a little bit freewheeling. So I didn't really prepare a lot of notes, mostly from my memory. Feel free to fact check and correct me if I get any of this wrong. So the US government is actually defined quite well in the US Constitution. The Constitution is actually a fairly impressive document, and I would encourage everyone to go and read it, especially Americans. You should know what's in there. It's a fairly easy read. It's pretty straightforward language, most of it. And if you do read it and you understand it, you'll be much better positioned to know what the US government is doing and how much of that is constitutionally based and how much of it is actually counter to the Constitution. The US government is made up of three basic pillars. They're three co-equal branches of government. The founders wrote this to create a separation of powers to ensure that no one entity, structure, or individual would have too much power. So the primary one that most people know about is the executive branch. This is where the president is within the executive branch, the vice president, and all of the secretaries that the president nominates. President is elected every 4 years in the federal presidential election, and the term limits for presidential terms is 2, so they can be president for 8 years maximum. The second branch of government is the congressional branch. The congressional branch, known as Congress, is made up of 2 sections. There's the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, often in media and with people talking about the US government, when they say Congress, they often mean the House of Representatives. So watch out for that. Sometimes people get confused, and people are confused. The House of Representatives is a body of 436 elected members, and they are re-elected every 2 years. So their election coincides with the executive branch presidential election, plus they're also running again at midterm election. That's every 2 years. Also in the congressional branch is the Senate. The Senate is made up of 100 elected members, and there are 2 for every state, which is interesting because California, for example, has 40 million people, so each 20 million people gets 1 senator. Wyoming has about 500,000 people, so about 250,000 or a bit more than that per senator. So representation in the Senate is not very equal. The Senate is actually they have 6-year terms. So if you are a senator and you've been in the Senate for some time, you had an election on the federal presidential election, and then your subsequent one will be on a midterm, and then your subsequent one after that will be on a federal presidential election. The third branch is the judicial branch. Essentially, a whole lot of judges. Now, judges interpret the law. They don't write law, they interpret law. Law comes from Congress. Law is put into law is made law by Congress with approval from the president. The president, by the way, has veto power over new law, not existing law, new law. And but the judges are there to interpret law, and that includes right up to interpreting the Constitution. So the top tier of the judges is the Supreme Court of the United States, and there are 9 uh, Supreme Court justices. Judges and justices are nominated by the president and approved by the congressional branch. So if you are voting in the United States, you are voting for the people who are in the congressional branch, you are voting for the president, vice president in the executive branch, and you are also voting for the people who will nominate and approve the members of the judicial branch. That more or less covers, I should add actually, it doesn't, there's one more thing to talk about, the Electoral College. Each state is assigned a certain number of Electoral College votes, and the Electoral College votes count towards the presidential election. And the votes are supposed to be based on population size. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Populations change quite often, and it's difficult to change the Electoral College votes, although it does happen. So each state is assigned a certain number, some more, some less, and then the total number of Electoral College votes that goes towards one nominee versus the other decides who is going to be the president. So, in fact, Americans don't directly vote for their president, they vote for Electoral College votes. Now, it's interesting that historically, states used to divide their Electoral College votes between candidate A and candidate B based on representation of their voters' wishes. So, for example, candidate A has 75% of the votes in a state, candidate B gets 25%, and if that state has 4 Electoral College votes, they would assign 3 to one and 1 to the other. At some point, one of the states decided that they were going to assign all of their votes based on the majority of voters in their state. And that kind of forced the rest of the states to do that, to kind of make up for it. And the result now is that you have a number of states that are quite significantly leaning in one direction and can be relied on to vote in that direction, and their electoral college votes will go that way. And you have other states that are the same but in the other direction. And then you have a number of states that are called swing states, and those are the ones where they are very, very close and they could go either way. And there's sort of generally considered to be about 7 of those at the current time. And so for generally for a president to win, they need to win most of the swing states or all of the swing states. So that's kind of it. Like I said, feel free to fact check me. And otherwise, just stay calm, stay strong, and when required, elbows up.